Just hours before the Supreme Court stopped the administration from deporting a group of Venezuelans using the centuries-old Alien Enemies Act, the president's border czar was fiercely defending the law's use. I spoke with Tom Homan Friday and began by asking him about Senator Van Hollen's meeting with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Senator Van Hollen has obviously got a chance to meet with him, but he had to travel to El Salvador to get any information. Does that concern you at all? I mean, these are people sent by the United, I mean, in his case, sent by the United States, and not even a U.S. senator could get any information about his whereabouts or the condition of his incarceration without actually going down and making the trip to El Salvador himself?
Well, he obviously knew his whereabouts because he went there to see him. But you know what bothers me more than that is a U.S. senator traveled to El Salvador on taxpayer dime to meet with an MS-13 gang member, public safety threat, terrorist. I mean, in the meantime, the day before he traveled, an illegal alien was arrested for murder, released to the streets rather than honoring an ICE detainer in his very own state. What concerns me is Van Hollen never went to the border the last 4 years on Joe Biden when he had a 600% increase in sex trafficking in women and children. You have a record number of no-inspected terrorists crossing that border. You had 250,000 Americans die from fentanyl overdose because of the open border. You got over 4,000 illegal aliens died making that journey, which is an historic record. What shocks me is he's remained silent on the travesty that happened on our southern border. Many people died. Thousands of people died. I've met with hundreds of angel moms and dads who buried their children that were murdered by an illegal alien. How many angel moms and dads has he met in the state of Maryland? That's what concerns me.
He says that he has done this because it's the issue here is due process, and it's following a court order. The Supreme Court has said that the administration needs to facilitate his return so he could have his chance at due process.
I think, and I understand to facilitate, but he's also in custody. He's a citizen and national of the country of El Salvador. El Salvador would certainly have to cooperate in that. But again, I'm on the loop on that. I'm not an attorney. I'm not litigating this case. We'll do whatever the law says we have to do. And what I think, I stand by the fact I think we did the right thing here. We removed a public safety threat, a national security threat, a violent gang member from the United States. ICE intelligence says he's an MS-13 gang member. A confidential informant says he's an MS-13 gang member. The country of El Salvador says he's an MS-13 gang member. I think he's exactly where he should be.
But you said that the El Salvador would have to cooperate. You have no doubt that if President Trump wanted him returned, that he could ask President Bukele to return him, right? I mean, President Trump could make this happen.
I can't comment on something I don't know. I can't comment.
What do you think? I mean, you know President.
I'm not involved in.
I mean, you know President Trump. You've talked about how, he can get things done. I mean, if he wanted the guy returned, he could get him returned, right?
I do. I'm not going to comment on conversations I'm not a part of. I don't know what conversations they're having, who's having what conversation, what officials. I'm not in the loop on that.
So more broadly, let me ask you. I know you're a law guy. You've sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution. You did that through your entire career. The general principle I want to ask you is: do you agree that the Constitution extends those constitutional rights that we all have extend to every person in the United States? Every person, no matter what crime they're accused of, or no matter their legal status.
And we have followed the Constitution. We have followed the law. I am confident that everything we've done is follow the law and is within the constitutional constructs. Absolutely.
And so that right of due process is something, the Fifth Amendment right of due process extends to everybody who would be deported. Well, they have a chance to have a hearing on this.
The length of due process is not the same under the Alien Enemies Act. That's why the Alien Enemies Act was created. President Trump invoked the authorities he had of the Alien Enemies Act, an act written and passed by Congress and signed by a president. We're using the laws on the books, the statutes on the books, to secure the border and remove significant public safety threats and national security threats to this country.
But let me get more specific on this. The Supreme Court has long held that constitutional rights extend to every person in the United States. Justice Scalia, a majority opinion that he wrote back in 1993, wrote, "It is well established that the Fifth Amendment entitles aliens to due process of law in deportation proceedings. Are you saying that by invoking the Alien Enemies Act that undocumented immigrants are not entitled to those due process rights under the Fifth Amendment?
Well, I'm saying the procedure under Alien Enemies Act is less than it is there in a Title VIII removal proceeding, and we're following the rules of the Alien Enemies Act. Again, I think this administration has followed the law. They've used the statutes enacted by Congress, signed by the president, to remove the terrorists from this country. I'm not saying, I'm not arguing here that nobody should get due process. I'm just saying there's a different process under Alien Enemies Act, less of a process than you see through Title VIII.
Let me ask you, do you have any qualms about sending people to that notorious prison in El Salvador with no assurance that they will ever have a chance to get out? People that have no record, have not been convicted of any violent crimes. Do you have any qualms about that?
I believe removing public safety threats and terrorists, designated terrorists, to that prison in El Salvador. Trende Agua MS-30 has been designated a terrorist organization. What you don't know, what most readers don't know, they haven't seen and experienced what I've seen in my 40 years. I started in Board in 1984. I've talked to young girls, young as 9, that were raped by members of these gang cartels. I've held dead bodies throughout my career. I've talked to 100 angel moms and dads whose children were killed and brutally murdered by members of MS-13 who just didn't kill them. They mutilated them, they tortured them. So if people wore my shoes for the last 40 years and seen the travesties I've seen, they would understand that the worst of the worst need to be sent to a prison like that, because we got to protect American citizens, we got to protect this country.
And you're saying there's no mistakes? No mistakes, that everybody's sent to this prison, again, with no guarantee of any right to have a chance to challenge their imprisonment, any prospect of release. And they didn't go through a full, and none of these people, as you've acknowledged, have gone through a full trial.
You need to read the Alien Enemies Act. We follow the Alien Enemies Act, and you're talking like it's a Title VIII removal. It isn't a Title VIII removal. That's a different procedure.
Yeah, so you're acknowledging without
Congress, without an Enemies Act.
So no extended proceedings, no chance to prove their innocence. Somebody's got a bad tattoo.
I'm telling
somebody's
you, we can go.
Been accused. I mean, you acknowledge tattoos are part of the calculation here. I mean, you might have a tattoo.
There's one factor out of many factors. I worked. Have you been in an alien gang squad? Because I have. Tattoos are one of many factors that's going to determine someone's gang. It's not the only one. You can't say, okay, tattoo gang member. No, there's other indicia that's added to that tattoo. Tattoo is one factor that adds to other factors that make that determination. What I'm saying is you can't ignore a tattoo. That's one more factor that leads you to believe maybe he's a gang member. It's just not based on tattoos. It's based on a lot of other things, but tattoo's one of many. But no one's removed just because of a tattoo.
In other words, the Alien Enemies Act means you can grab somebody and you can deport them without an extended hearing because you have labeled them a terrorist. Because you've said you've determined that somebody is a member of the gang, and therefore they don't have to go through the extended process of the opportunity to have a full hearing. That's what you're saying. And let's just be clear.
I'm saying we're following the laws of this country, and there's a different procedure for each one. We're doing things within the frame of the law. We're doing things legally.
Okay.
I stand by that. Now, again, I'm not a constitutional scholar. I'm not going to argue this in court. That's what the Department of Justice does. But I'm sitting here today thinking we've done the right thing for this nation, following the laws and the Constitution of this country.
All right, Tom Homan, the Trump administration's border czar, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
The White House responded to the Supreme Court's temporary hold on the use of the Alien Enemies Act in a statement from Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, saying in part, "We are confident in the lawfulness of the administration's actions and in ultimately prevailing against an onslaught of meritless litigation brought by radical activists who care more about the rights of terrorist aliens than those of the American people."